Today on Sports Central, we go over our next team projection of this offseason, and it's going to be over the Kentucky Wildcats, a team that went 5-6 overall in the 2020 season. Not a terrible season for Kentucky, as they made it to a bowl game and ended up winning their bowl game for that matter. So overall, not a terrible season for Kentucky, but how will this team be in 2021 is what we're going over here today. We're also going to go over a few players that this team will be losing, who they're returning, and also looking at their schedule for the first time this offseason, starting out with your previous 6 games for the Wildcats. And overall, this team played pretty well last season. They had a couple of good wins down the stretch for sure, even though they took some pretty terrible losses as well. They lost to Georgia 3-14. That was a weird game there. It was pretty low scoring, but I mean they kept it pretty close with a good Georgia team. They beat Vanderbilt 30-35, a little close for comfort, but that was before getting completely demolished by Alabama 3-63 was the final score in that matchup. They lost to Florida 10-34. They beat South Carolina though. That was a big win, 41-18, and then of course they beat NC State to finish out the season on January 2nd. 23-21 was the score there. So overall, Kentucky did not have a terrible season. I mean, 5-6 is not a very ideal record, but they won their bowl game against a pretty good team, a team that was on fire at the time. And overall, this team really played pretty well down the stretch if you exclude all of their tough opponents. So they were 2-3 in their first 5 games. They were 3-3 in the last 6. So Kentucky did improve, you could say, over the course of the season. Looking at your returning production, though, Terry Wilson, he transfers to New Mexico. He will not be with this team next season. Joey Gatewood is more than likely going to be taking over at the quarterback position, so watch out for him next season. I mean, Terry Wilson overall, I definitely think he definitely had potential going into next season if he were to stay, but of course New Mexico might just be the better place for him to be. But last season he put up just over 1,100 yards, 7 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 63% completion rate as well. So Joey Gatewood on the flip side, he did not play a whole lot, but when he did play, put up just over 100 yards, 1 interception, and a 49% completion rate. So wasn't very promising in the drive that he was in, but overall, this is definitely, this Kentucky team is definitely a huge rushing team, and this is how it's been for the past few years. Kentucky being a huge rushing team with Terry Wilson. He put up 420 rushing yards last season, 5 touchdowns on the run as well. So overall, this is definitely a big rushing team. Chris Rodriguez is coming back for next season. He put up, just right around 800 yards and 11 touchdowns last year. So he did not have a terrible season at all. He's going to be a big running back to watch out for in the SEC for sure. Asim Rose, he will not be back for next season. And it's just it's tough for this team to lose Asim Rose, because if you could have both Chris Rodriguez and Asim Rose back, this team would be absolutely stacked in the running back position. Like, this team could possibly have the best running back core in all the SEC and possibly one of the best in the nation if they had Asim Rose coming back. But Chris Rodriguez definitely, I think, has got some good potential, and this team will be just fine with him. But Rose last season put up just right around 800 yards as well as 2 touchdowns. So yeah, you can watch out for him as well. Josh Allen is coming back for next season as well at the wide receiver position. He was a top receiver for this team last year, putting up just right around 500 yards and a touchdown. So he was definitely the main wide receiver for this team. Like, once again, this Kentucky team is very heavy on the run. They're not much of a passing team by any means. That's a huge example based off of the passing core that this team had last season and the quarterbacks. Terry Wilson put up just right around 1,200 yards, and he started for the majority of the season. So that's definitely an interesting factor that this team had to deal with. But otherwise, Keaton Upshaw, he is coming back. He's the tight end for this team, the main one for that matter, and that's going to be a big return there with Keaton Upshaw. Watch out for him, as he put up just over 200 yards and 3 touchdowns last year. At the offensive line position, they lose 2 there, 3 defensive linemen. Definitely a couple of big hits there on that defensive side, with 1 linebacker and 2 in the secondary also going. So Kentucky is definitely losing a moderate amount, I'd say, going into next season. This defense will lose quite a bit. We were going to have a young defense, or Kentucky will next season, as they're losing 6 there on the defensive side. So watch out for that for sure next season. This team has got a lot of potential, but on the defensive side, that's going to be pretty tough, losing 6 of your starters. But chances of a bowl season in 2021, I'd say they're pretty good for Kentucky. I think this team won't quite be a national contender or a contender for any reason, but this team definitely, I think, has got some good potential to make a run at a bowl game, which that'd be pretty good for Kentucky next season, for sure, if they can win another bowl game. But Otherwise, this team, I just don't see potential here for them to make a run at the SEC by any means once again. But otherwise, I mean, this team does have potential. I mean, even though the defensive side is going to be pretty young, this offense does look pretty good going to next season. So there definitely could be improvement, especially on the offensive side. Watch out for that there. But otherwise, looking at your schedule going into next season, of course, you start off the year against Louisiana Monroe, probably the worst team or one of the worst teams in the FBS last year. So that's going to be a very easy win. We could see a huge blowout win there for Kentucky if you're looking at just that game. Missouri, then, of course, you got them on the 11th. You got Chattanooga, then after that, South Carolina on the road, Florida, LSU to follow that. You got Georgia on the road, Mississippi State on the road, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, New Mexico State, and then Louisville. Something that's very interesting here, I mean, if you look at this team's schedule, I mean, there's a big mix-up with the non-conference games for this team. Like, you got Chattanooga in the third week, you got Louisiana Monroe in the first week. You got, of course, New Mexico State and Louisville then to finish it out. So that's kind of how it is with the SEC, though. Just the non-conference schedules are super weird. But for Kentucky, I do expect you to start off the season with a pretty easy win against Louisiana Monroe. That's going to be a huge blowout win there. Missouri's going to be a close one. I do think that's a winnable game. You got Chattanooga and South Carolina. Both those games will be wins. Florida and LSU are both going to be very interesting games in the fact that they're both at home for Kentucky, but at the same time, both teams are going to be pretty challenging next season. So I think they're both winnable, but I'd probably favor Florida and LSU both in those matchups as of now. So you could easily start off the season, I'd say 4-0, which would be a great scenario for Kentucky. And if you do start off the season 4-0, you could expect probably 7 to 8, maybe even 9 wins over the course of the season. It does get tougher as the schedule goes on, but I definitely think your toughest part of the season is definitely in between your games 5 through 7 with Florida, LSU, and Georgia. Speaking of which, that's going to be a tough game. I think Georgia's going to end up being a loss. Georgia's going to be a super good team next season. I think with JT Daniels, that team is going to be very dangerous and a big contender for the college football playoffs. So that will be a loss. That's the one guaranteed loss on your schedule. But Mississippi State, that's going to be a close one. Tennessee is going to be close. Both those games, I think, are very winnable for Kentucky, but I'm not going to put them as wins quite yet. Vanderbilt and New Mexico State are both going to be easy wins for Kentucky. I could easily see both those games being pretty comfortable for Kentucky there. Louisville's going to be a close game, though, as well. I mean, it usually is, so there's no reason to believe that it will be a blowout by any means, but that's kind of what the schedule looks like for Kentucky. Your ceiling's going to be 9-3 for next season, so that's basically the best that you possibly could be. There's going to be a wide range for Kentucky next season, just so you guys know. I think this team has definitely got talent, but at the same time, this team could easily flop as well. So basically, your range is going to be between 4 and 9 wins. Your top is going to be 9-3. Your projection will be 6-6. That's kind of where I'm expecting Kentucky to land. I think this team will more than likely make it to a bowl game, but there still is that one chance that they're like one of the first teams out of a bowl game for next season. But the floor will be 4-8. So that's the worst that you possibly could be next season. But 6-6, I'd say, is a pretty comfortable bet for Kentucky next season, just based off of the youngness on the defensive side for one, but also, I mean, this team is looking pretty young for the most part next season. You got a new quarterback taking over as well, so you got to watch out for that. But in the end, let me know your thoughts in the comments below on Kentucky. Let me know your record predictions and all of that down in the comments. I appreciate you guys all watching, though. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I'll see you guys all later.